Good morning, fourth graders. This is the video that goes with the lesson for April 20th, Monday, April 20th. It's lesson 9.1, relating tenths and decimals. This is kind of some new territory for us. This chapter is connecting decimals and fractions together. So the fractions part's not so new to us, but the decimals is a totally new area for us. So I'm going to be including lots of videos this week that will help you hopefully understand the decimals a little bit better. If we were in class, I'd be doing a lot of like fun things that would help us kind of understand them before we start digging into what's in the book. But kind of the best thing I could come up with was using the videos from YouTube, so you can see it in a couple different perspectives before you get into the lessons. But just a quick overview. If you watched the place value song video before you watch this video, you'll probably recognize it from the beginning of the year. There was a spot in that video that we kind of ignored while we were doing that video before, and it was about the decimals. So this time we're actually going to start using them. So that's why I put that video up for you today, to kind of remind you of how the decimals fit into the other place values. But I'm just going to kind of quickly go over just the basics of it and how it relates to what we're doing today. So I'm actually over on page 494B. In this blank space right here, I was just using as kind of a little writing space. But you guys are familiar with the hundreds place, the tens place, and the ones place. You were used to that from before. So that shouldn't be anything new to you as well. What is new to you now is the decimal point. So here's the decimal point. The decimal just helps us separate the whole numbers, which is on this side, from the partial numbers, the fractions on this side. So anything to the right of the decimal represents a value less than 1, less than a whole number, and anything to the left of the decimal place represents some kind of whole number. So the first place value to the right of the decimal place, the first one is called the tenths place. It has a TH on the end of it. And that's representing how many tenths, like the fraction 1/10. It's representing how many tenths, how many tenth size pieces of a number is represented in here. The second place value from the decimal on the right side is called the hundredths place. It also has a TH on the end of it, and that represents how many pieces out of 100 are represented in that number. Now, you should see that these kind of mirror each other. You got the ones place here, but on either side, there's the 10 and the tenths place. You got the 100 and the hundredths place. So, you know, when you're on the left side of the decimal point, you have ones, tens, hundreds. Then you get into the thousands, but it's still 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Then you have the millions, and it's 1 million, the 10 millions, and then the 100 millions. This side, it goes the same way, but backwards. It starts with, it starts with the tenths place, the hundredths place, and then it keeps going over. Then this becomes the thousandth place, the 1,000th place, then the 10,000th place, and then the 100,000th place. So it goes the other direction, except for it's got the TH on the end of it, which is representing some kind of fraction. So like, I always think about decimals in terms of money, because that's kind of the thing that we're the most familiar with. And at the time that you use the decimals the most often, I think. So if I handed you $3.25, this actually represents 3 whole dollars and 25 1/100ths of a dollar, because we know that 25 cents, you need 100 cents to make a dollar, but 25 cents is less than a dollar, so it would be represented as a fraction. So this money amount written as a fraction, as a mixed number, actually looks like this, because it's 3 whole dollars and 25 1/100ths of another dollar. 25 out of the 100 cents you need to make a fourth dollar. So decimals are connected to fractions in this way. In fourth grade, we really only deal with the tenths place and the hundredths place. So if I send you some videos that have the thousands place or other places beyond that mentioned, you can ignore those because you won't get to those until fifth grade. But this is important to help you get ready for fifth grade for next year. So anything to the right of the decimal is a fraction. It's represented in tenths, hundredths, thousands, anything beyond that. And to the left are the whole numbers that you're already used to. So this lesson is all about relating tenths and decimals. So you can see which tenth fraction equals what kind of tenth place decimal. Because fractions and decimals can equal each other because they both are a representation of a part of a whole number. You know, if this one has 7 tenths on here, well, 7 tenths is not a whole section. It's only 7 pieces. So a decimal represents this value in the same way. It's just written differently. So let's do this page together. This is page 495. Ty is reading a book about metamorphic rocks. He has read 7 tenths of the book. What decimal describes the part of the book Ty has read? A decimal is a number with one or more digits to the right of the decimal point, which is just what I showed you over here. You can write tenths and hundredths as fractions or decimals. So these are comparing, they're matching together fractions with its equivalent decimal and back and forth. So they give you on this one, they say shade 7 tenths of the model. So this is broken into 7 or 10 pieces. So I'm going to shade in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots. That's 7. So this becomes 7 tenths. And you read that as 7 tenths. But now we're turning it into a decimal. So 7 tenths is 7 tenths. There are no whole numbers with this. This is just a fraction. There's no whole numbers built into it. So I'm going to put a 0 in the ones place because there's no one whole number. And there's the decimal point. And because this is 7 tenths, we can put the 7 in the tenths place. Again, going back to this is the tenths place. So because this is read as 7 tenths, we can just pop that 7 in the tenths place. And we don't have any hundredths in this one because we're only measuring in tenths. So I'm going to put a 0 in the hundredths. So this is written as 0.70. Well, you can leave the 0 off for now because there's no hundredths, so you can leave that off. 0.7. And then that's also read as 7 tenths. They're read the same way, just one's in decimal form and one's in fraction form. But these equal each other. They represent the same amount of space. If I were to draw a model representing this decimal, I would draw it the exact same way I did this one. All right. Use a number line. Label the number line with decimals that are equivalent to the fractions. Locate the point 7 tenths. So they start it for you. They give you a number line that's broken into tenths. You can see that all the way down. 0 out of 10 is just 0.0 because there's no pieces at all, so there's nothingness there. 1 tenth is written as 0.1 because it's 1 tenth. The 1 can go in the tenths place. 2 tenths, same thing. Because there's 2 tenth size pieces, you can put the 2 in the tenths place, which is that first place to the right of the decimal. So all of these turn out to be the same way. There's 3 tenths pieces, so I can put a 3 in the tenths place. Same thing all the way down, because there's 4 pieces, 5 pieces, 6 pieces, 7 pieces, 8 pieces, 9 pieces. Now with these, it's really important that you include the ones place. Even though there's nothing in the ones place, you still need to put that 0 there because we don't write decimals like this. We just don't do that because it's just not the proper way to write it. So you always need to make sure you include the ones place with it so that somebody looking at this decimal can easily tell, Oh, that's less than 1. That's only a piece of something. Instead of just thinking it's maybe a period or something else. So it says locate the point 7/10, so it's right here. 0.7, 0 and 7/10 names the same amount as 7/10. So Ty read 7/10 of the book. So it says, how could you write 1/10 as a fraction, 0.1? You just write it because it's a 1 in the 10th place. It becomes 1 out of 10 pieces. Turn the page. All right, Tara rode her bicycle 1 6/10 of a mile. Tara rode her bicycle 1 6/10 miles. How many oh my goodness, I can't read today. What decimal describes how far she rode her bicycle? You already have written a fraction as a decimal. You can also write a mixed number as a decimal. Okay, so this is the exact same thing we did, except this time it's a mixed number and not just a piece of something. It's not just a fraction. So it says shade in a model 1 6/10 of the model. So I'm going to shade, because I have one whole number, I can shade in one whole model. Okay, so that's one whole model, and it's 6/10 of the next model. So I'm going to shade in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 1 6/10. Now, turning that into a decimal, because we say it actually as 1 6/10, that's telling us it's one whole circle or one whole model and 6/10 of the other model, just like we have here, one whole model and 6/10 of another model. So we're going to represent that using the base 10 number system, which is the decimal system. Because there's one whole model, I'm going to put a 1 in the ones place. It tells me I got one whole number. So whole numbers go on this side of the decimal, and the fraction part goes on the right side of the decimal. So this is 6/10 because this is the 6. It goes in the 10th place because it's said as 6/10. So it can go in the 10th place. So that is now, we don't have any hundredths, so I'm actually just going to cross that out. So then this becomes 1 6/10 written that way. Same amount of space. If I were to draw a model with this decimal, it would look exactly like this one. This one's just in fraction form. This one's just in decimal form. Same thing. They represent the same amount of space. They just are in different forms. So this becomes, this one's read as 1 6/10. This one is also read as 1 6/10. That decimal point is like an and. So 1 6/10. All right, this is like the number line on the other one, except it just has whole numbers with it. It's broken down into pieces of 1/10 each. So this is 1 0/10, which is just 1. Okay, that's just the same thing. They just wrote the 0/10 in there so you could reference it compared to the other ones. I have 1 1/10, 1 2/10, 1 3/10, 1 4/10, 1 5/10, 1 6/10. Oops, that's not a 10. 1 7/10, 1 8/10, 1 9/10. And the equivalent fraction would be 1, since it's 1 1/10. I'm going to put a 1 in the whole number spot, a decimal, and then a 1 in the 10th spot. A 1 in the whole spot, a 2 in the 10th spot. All the way down. So this is locate point, the point 1 6/10. That's right here. So 1 6/10 names the same amount as 1 6/10. So Tara rode her bicycle 1.6 miles. Write 1 as a fraction and as a decimal. So 1 whole all by itself, no fractions, which is just filling in this whole model. It's just 1. There's no fraction attached to it, so there's no pieces colored in. So your fraction is 10 out of 10, because I colored 10 of the 10 pieces, or 1 whole. And 1 whole is 1 whole and 0 tenths. So I've got 1 whole and 0 tenths. So that's the same thing here. 1 whole and 0 tenths is just 1. Alrighty. Now I'm on page 497. It says write 5/10 as a fraction and as a decimal. So I always start with the fraction part on these because that's what I'm most familiar with. You guys do the same thing. You're more familiar with the fractions than you are the decimals at this point. So I would always start with the fraction part if you can. So 5/10 written as a fraction is 5 out of 10. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because I've got 5/10 pieces, I can put a 5 in the 10ths place. So this would be 0.5. Because remember, this is the 10ths place, and this is representing a value out of the tenths. That's why these two are equal. So that's 0.5 and no hundredths. We'll get into hundredths in the next one, in the next video. Write the fraction or mixed number and the decimal shown by the model. So this is 1 whole, so that's 1. This is another model, or another whole model, sorry. So that's 2 whole ones. And then this is broken into tenths, so that is 2 tenth size pieces. You should know this from when we've done fractions before. That part should be pretty familiar to you. But turning into a decimal is a little different. I just like using this chart to help remind me where things go. So in the ones place, I have 2 whole models filled. So my ones place is going to be a 2. Decimal. How many tenths are covered in this one? 2. 2 tenths are covered, which means I put the 2 in the tenths place. This one does it in number line form, and they want you to figure out what this value is right here. They break it apart into tenths for you. So this is 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. So this one is just a fraction. It has no whole number with it off to the side. So you're going to put a 0 in your ones place because there's no 1 whole section. It's just, this is 1 whole section over here, so it's less than that. So then I put my decimal. I have 8/10 represented, which means I can put an 8 in the tenths place. All right. So we've got these two. This one is, there's no whole sections covered here, so I'm not going to have a whole number. I'm just going to have a fraction. This is 4/10 colored in, so this fraction is 4/10. And written as a decimal. 0 in the ones place because there is no whole numbers. And then you put your decimal point to show that there's a fraction coming. And the fraction is 4/10. 4 in the tenths place, which is the same as the fraction. Same with this one. I have 1 whole model colored in. So that's 1 whole one. And then I've got 9 of the 10 pieces colored in over here. So that's the fraction for this model, which as a decimal is 1 whole and 9/10 because it's in the tenths place. Here they show with number lines. So this is 1 whole with 0 out of 10. And this is 1 whole with 5 out of 10. So this is broken down into fifths. It just starts at 1. So this is 1 1/5. That does not look like 5. And then as a decimal, that's 1 whole. Oh my goodness, why did I put fifths? I keep saying fifths. Sorry guys, they're in tenths. They're measured in tenths. I think I just thought it was fifths because I saw the 5 there. We're only working, in this whole chapter, we're only working with tenths and hundredths. So that should give you a clue there. Because there's 1/10 in the tenths place. I'm going to put a 1 in the tenths place. And then this one is from 3 and 0/10 to 4 and 0/10. So there's 10 sections here. So that's 3 and 1/10, 3 and 2/10, 3 and 4/10, 3 and, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4. So that'd be 3 and 4/10, which is the same thing as 3 and 4/10 written as a decimal. Alrighty, so on these ones, I'm going to have you pause the video because I want you to try these on your own. These are all just fractions that you're turning into the decimal. Don't forget that your whole number from your mixed number goes on the left side of your decimal, and your fraction is represented on the right side of your decimal. So I want you to pause the video. And here's your answers. So I got 5 whole. So that goes on the left side. 9/10, other one, put a 9 in the tenths place. This one has no whole number, so it's going to be a 0 and 1 in the tenths place. This one also doesn't have a whole number. So I've got 7/10. It's the same thing as a 7 in the tenths place. I have a whole number of 8 and 9/10. The 9 is in the tenths place. No whole numbers on this one, so it's a 0.6. Sweet, this one is 6 and 3/10. This one is 0 whole numbers and 5/10. And this one is 9 and 7/10. So I'm not going to worry so much about the next page. This is kind of a lot for our brains to digest because like I said, we're going into a whole new territory. So I have some other videos for you to watch tomorrow. And I'm kind of going to show you the 100th place too, so that you can kind of start building your understanding of how these decimals work. If you join me for Zoom today at 1:30, again, this video is meant for April 20th. So if you're doing this on a different day, you missed out. But on April 20th at 1:30, you can join me for Zoom and I will work through this page with you, the page 499. I will do that one with you and help you with it. Hope Steve is there. If you have any questions, send me a message and I'll help you out. Bye!